Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hello, and welcome to the Back to Basics podcast, where we explore the deeper connections that make us tick as humans. Today, I'm excited to welcome a truly inspiring guest, Lisa Lutoff-Perlo. She's a recognized global business powerhouse and recipient of numerous awards, including the Southeast Florida Business Journal and Forbes Travel Guide Lifetime Achievement Awards. She's best known for her transformative role as the former CEO of Celebrity Cruises, where she made history as the first woman to lead a major cruise line. Her leadership helped redefine the luxury cruise experience with a focus on innovation, diversity, and sustainability. She also helped activate the enthusiasm for soccer here in Miami during her tenure as president and CEO of the FIFA World Cup 2026 Miami Host Committee. She's a sought-after keynote speaker, and she's also the author of Making Waves, A Woman's Rise to the Top Using Smarts, Heart, and Courage. I love all of that, and thank you, Lisa, for being part of Back to Basics.
My pleasure, Leticia. It's wonderful being here with you today.
Well, there's so many things I love. I mean, as an Italian, I love soccer, so I thank you for helping ignite that enthusiasm for that sport that is misunderstood in the U.S., I think, by many.
Still a little bit, but getting better. Getting better, I would say, for sure.
I totally agree, and I think you contributed to that, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. So, I mean, there's so much, Lisa. You have a lot of content out there. You just are really a trailblazer, and that's with everything. The reason why this podcast exists is to establish that your journey could be anybody's journey. And I know, especially on that, you're big on. So when I heard you say that on an interview, I said, I have to reach Lisa and see if she would come to the podcast. So can you share a little bit of your origin story? Just where were you born? And most especially, what did you dream of becoming when you were a little girl? And if any of those passions really make it into your life?
Thank you, Leticia. And yes, Making Waves, I think at the heart of that story really is, if I can do it, you can do it. And I started my life where I was born was Gloucester, Massachusetts, the oldest seaport in the United States, a very small fishing town. Most of the kids I grew up with in that town were Italian and Portuguese, and all of their dads, brothers, uncles, fathers, grandfathers were fishermen. So it was a small fishing town. My parents always owned either restaurants or coffee shops in that town. And I'm neither Italian nor Portuguese, and no one in my family were fishermen. But I got a love for hospitality and people at a very, very young age, because part of it's in my DNA and my personality, and the other part is because my parents were always in hospitality. So I always find it serendipitous that I ended up in an industry for just almost 40 years in hospitality on the ocean, because I grew up on the ocean and my parents had restaurants, and my whole career has been in hospitality. And to answer the question of did I ever think I would end up where I ended up, the answer is a resounding no. Never in my wildest imagination or dreams. I didn't know for a very long time what I wanted to do, when I grew up, where I wanted my career to be. And even when I ended up in the company I was with for 40 years, I still never thought I would be president and CEO of one of the brands. I was in sales for 17 years in progressive roles, leadership roles within sales. And my sole ambition at that point in time was just to be the head of sales. So my story is also one of, you should probably dream bigger. Mm-hmm. And you probably shouldn't limit yourself in how you think about where you could end up. And you should probably, think that you're capable of as much as other people think you're capable of, because those three things were big lessons for me, for my career, where I ended up versus where I started and how I thought about it along the way.
Beautiful. And that's why I'm excited that um, you decided to write this book that I have. I didn't read it. I listened to it because these days it's hard to find
Okay,
the time to sit down and
that's
read, although
right.
I'm more of a paper
Right.
person. But I say if it's going to get done, it has to get done somehow. But you're also big on leadership and transmitting that leadership, those leadership skills. And I think that message of
Yes.
dreaming
Yes.
bigger is super important, because if we are not our biggest cheerleader, who is going to be? I'm a big believer on that. And it makes me
That's
sad
right.
sometimes where you see people that could do so much and they just, it's almost they say no to themselves
That's right.
before they
Yeah.
even throw the name on the hat. So I think
Yeah.
that's why your book can really inspire many to dream bigger and really go after anything. And part of the journey that I love is that you started in the travel agency as a travel
Yeah.
agent, or
Yeah.
right. So it's a job where people say, well, I'm just a travel agent. How can I even dream of doing this? So can you talk a little bit of what you think made the difference, besides allowing yourself to dream bigger, that really help you carve out that beautiful career journey?
Well, again, I think a lot of it is how we're wired as human beings, right? As people. What is comfortable for you? I've always been ambitious. I've always been competitive. I've always wanted to be the best at anything I've ever done. And so those, I think, inherent qualities are helpful, certainly when you're thinking about what you want to do. I did start at the bottom. And I think that's that's another thing that people don't understand. They think you need to start near the top to get to the top. They don't realize that you can start somewhere very low on the totem pole, like I did, and end up somewhere that, again, you never dreamed you'd end up being through through looking at different opportunities as they present themselves as stepping stones to something that could be bigger. I've talked to a lot of people, even in my previous company, and as people ask me for insight and advice about how they're thinking about their careers and how they might be able to do what I was able to do. One of the things I also learned is that you have to be willing to do different things, to get different experiences, and build your resume and your value so that when these opportunities come up, you're tapped on the shoulder for them. And I didn't realize that until I was in the company for almost 20 years, where I was taken from sales and put into marketing, and I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay in sales and be the head of sales. Little did I know that somebody forcing me out of my comfort zone to go learn new and more value in me than I saw in myself, that I could be an effective leader across the enterprise, was the first move that I made reluctantly. That was the first of many that I made that ultimately got me to where I ended up being. And once I made that first move, it was more comfortable for me to continue to make the moves. But that first one was hard, and I was not happy about it. I didn't embrace it right away, but once I did, I went for it. The same old me came back, and I became ambitious again and competitive again, and I wanted to be the best at it, even though it was new for me. Again, and then that was the beginning of a series of many other moves that ultimately got me to president and CEO.
And getting out of comfort zone, that seems to be like the big one. And the cliche imposter syndrome, I'm sure you felt it at some point, like saying, how am I going to do operations? I know you talk about it in the
Right,
book. You say,
right.
what, all these ships? I mean, and you imagine an operation like that. I mean, I admire, and I'm a cruiser. I've been cruising since I was a little girl. When cruise,
Yeah.
well, I don't know, my dad always loved it. And it's just incredible to acknowledge the fact that if you're ambitious and you're smart and you have the assets, even if you don't have the knowledge, you're big on surrounding yourself with people that know and having a great team. So can you lean on that a little bit in terms of how you were able to just really go to the helm with a great team?
Well, and as I was navigating my way through the company and taking on all of these different roles in which I was not a subject matter expert. I consider myself a salesperson at heart. That's where I started my career. And honestly, I believe we're always selling. So I don't think you ever stop selling, regardless of if you're standing in the boardroom selling your strategic plan or you're, selling something to a child to convince them to do something or your team. And so you're always selling. And I feel it's a huge asset to have in any role that you take on. But when I was taking on these other roles where I really didn't know what I was doing and I wasn't a subject matter expert, I learned that I was chosen for positions because I exhibited attributes that I believe the leadership in the company felt were very valuable, like my leadership capabilities, like my the way I thought about culture and teams, the way I solved problems, the way I got results, and people felt like those were transferable skills that I could take anywhere in the company. That said, that's true, and I did, but that said, you need to learn. You need to be willing to learn, and you need to be willing to say, I don't know everything, and I'm not a subject matter expert. And so I need to surround myself with people that know more than I do in certain areas so that I can be successful and so that we can all be successful. And you also have to be willing to ask people for help and admit, I don't know everything. Even the people that work for you, people are I've seen so many leaders come into roles and not be successful because they couldn't admit they didn't know everything they needed to. They weren't willing to ask for help. They weren't willing to show any vulnerability. And some people look at that as a weakness. And I look at all of those things as an absolute strength that helped me be successful as I went into so many roles and so many different areas of the company that I was, that I had never worked in before and was not a subject matter expert.
Well, I will tell you, when I was listening to your book, I would say, I must not be crazy because I feel exactly the same way in terms of I see so many ego, and I'm in telecommunications, so it's very male dominated industry, and that's diversity is something we'll touch upon. But sometimes it's like, am I crazy trying to be more open, like trying to create consensus, like trying to bring really the weaknesses into the table to see how we can all solve it when you see others approach it very differently, exactly to your point, like not showing the vulnerability. And sometimes you see them getting ahead with that strategy. Right. But I think ultimately you're going to hit a roadblock because we didn't solve what we needed to solve back there. And so sometimes you doubt yourself, like I know I do. And that's why I love the book in terms of how you use also the word courage in your title, which I think is very important because it takes a bold person to own your strategy to getting where you are, but you're living proof that it does work. And it does work creating something bigger, happy teams, instead of leaving devastation behind with people upset about everything because of the way leaders sometimes work. So I think that's a very, very important message. And you also, and empathy. Can you talk about empathy? Because I think it's seen as a weakness, as also in the business world, many times in the boardroom. And I think it's actually when used proper power.
Yeah, I'm a huge, huge proponent of empathy, empathetic leadership. And I feel like it's something that so many leaders lack. And, empathy means caring as much about others as yourself or more about others than yourself. And sometimes when you see where, people who rise to the top, it's all about them. And I just feel that my approach to leadership was one that I needed. I was leading 20,000 people from 70 different countries that were spread out all over the world. And these people left their homes and they left their families and they left their friends. They left their children. Mothers left children. Fathers left children to go and make a living for their family in a way that they couldn't in the countries that they come from. And I looked at that as such a tremendous sacrifice. And I looked at how they cared for each other and how they cared for our guests. And this was all new to me when I went into operations, because of course, as you can imagine, sales and marketing was very different, a very different environment. But I remember it really hitting me in 2005 when I went into operations, just how special our crew was. And how I didn't feel like they were nurtured enough or cared for enough. And I wanted to change that culture because I believed that they deserved it. And I believed that I would get discretionary effort for that. Because when people know you genuinely care about them, they usually genuinely care about you back. And then they put in this incremental effort that's priceless and that helps you be so successful. And because I'm that type of person anyway, it worked really well for me. But then I look around at other leaders, who have no empathy. And to your point that you just said something, Leticia, a moment ago about being willing to ask for help and being willing to be vulnerable, and that it was ultimately going to hit them as a roadblock at some point. I believe that empathetic leaders, it's going to do the same thing to them, because if people don't want to work for you, they have so many choices. They don't work for a job. Everybody needs to make a living and they'll stay for a little while, but they won't stay. And if they stay, you're not going to get 100%. You're going to get what they want to give you on any given day. And I just didn't think that was the best recipe for success. And so now I've been out of the brand for almost 2 years, and people cruise on Celebrity and tell me how much the crew still misses me. And I consider that the ultimate compliment, that after almost 2 years of still being gone, that the crew remembers and misses me and tells our guests that. And, I always say that's the one thing we can all, we all should want to happen, is that when we're not there anymore, whatever that means, that you're missed. And that means that you made an impact on people's lives that was very special. And that's how I wanted to lead. That's the type of leader I wanted to be.
That's your legacy, if you ask me. Like the fact that people remember you because of the culture you instill in the brand. And I know you share how you put together like crew members that were, trying to create a family. And I mean, this is something that seems so unimportant to some people, but it's like if they're happy, they're going to go to work happier. And it's just a snowball effect. And it's counterintuitive, but some people just don't lead from, I call it heart-centric leadership, where you really put in each other's shoes. So I love all that. So of course, on the more business side, that is always so fascinating. You held 3 positions, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I did listen to the book a while back, that you were the first female ever holding that position. And you, I think, were fortunate because you say you never felt pull back from men, like you never felt your gender meant anything different. And I think that's a very fortunate position to be, because when you talk to other women in other industries, like one way or the other, they have felt that pushback or not taken seriously, or when the moment came to really get that opportunity, somebody else got it. So what do you think? Do you think it's like you had great, besides being awesome and being, having all your attributes, does it take like a special kind of other men or people in leadership to pull up the ones that have the talent despite of their color, their race, or their gender?
Absolutely. For sure. And I happen to work with quite a few men that were like that. My biggest advocates have always been men, because I was in a male-dominated industry. There were no other women that were going to push me along or pull me along or help me succeed. So as I was climbing the corporate ladder, if you will, I never felt like gender was an obstacle for me. I felt like I was viewed as a high potential talent in the company, and I was rewarded with a lot of different positions for the work that I did and the results that I got. Where I faced a lot of gender discrimination is when I went into those operational roles, either from colleagues I was working with because they were all men, or on ships because all of the leaders and all around all of the ships were men. When I took over the Marine organization because it was all men, I felt like there were two things that I had to figure out how to get around. One was the gender issue of a woman being now world that truly only men had these, these executive roles, and only men ascended and were promoted. And then the other was that I was a girl. What did I know about being a captain or an engine room or, all of these different things? And so as I faced that skepticism, the chapter 4, I believe, is Watch Me Prove You Wrong. So I spent many years taking on all these different roles as the first woman, having to prove that I deserved to be where I was and figure out a way to work with all of these men, because as much progress as I made in gender equality and gender balance, the vast majority of everyone I worked with every day was still men. So I had to find my way as a woman. And what I realized is it didn't take long. I mean, I admitted I didn't know as much as they did about what they did. I admitted I had never done their job before. And I asked them to perhaps think of the fact that just because I hadn't done their job, there must be other reasons why I was put in this role. And then couldn't we figure out how to establish a mutually respectful relationship and mutually supportive relationship so we can all be successful? And when you come from a position of strength, and sometimes you run into a bully or two, and if you stand up to the bully, the bully usually becomes your biggest and staunchest supporter and advocate. And so, so that's really how I assimilated into this very male-dominated environment that I came into. And then I learned over time that they really appreciated working for a woman, and they really appreciated working for me. And they, were very sorry when I moved on from different positions that I was, no longer their boss or in those roles. So I think that it's only natural when a woman goes into these types of environments that always and only been men, that there's going to be a level of skepticism, lack of acceptance. And then we have to prove that, oh yeah, we belong here, and I'm going to prove you wrong. And that's what I did.
That you did. You definitely use it as fuel and gasoline to get to where you needed to be, and then to pay it forward, because you also, and you say you wrote the book because you want it as a way to giving back and proving that yes, it can be done. And also you appointed the first female captain, because I understand one of your goals where you had a very low percentage of diversity, and it's not only about gender. I'm very big on this. I believe in diversity of thought, and diversity of thought can only be achieved by bringing a lot of different backgrounds into the table.
Right.
And so you increase, I believe it's like from 2% to not, well, you left it, I think, 30% of diversity on the bridges, which is incredible. But you appointed, that takes courage to, the first female. I think her name is Captain Kate McCue. And tell us about her and that appointment, and also the thought process about you were going to do something that has never been done and probably was not popular or was popular. I don't know. I would love to know about that appointment and how it happened.
Well, when I became the first woman president and CEO of a brand in the company, I knew that I needed to make a statement about, now that I held this position of power. I mean, you really do need to be in a position of power and influence to be able to make significant change. And given that I knew that there was such a lack of gender diversity on the ships in all leadership roles, but especially on the bridges, that I had an opportunity to change that. And I felt like being the first woman to accomplish what I accomplished, and if I didn't help other women accomplish their dreams and their ambitions when they were really qualified for something, then I was squandering this great opportunity that I had. So I met Captain Kate McCue when I was the Executive Vice President of Operations at Royal Caribbean. She was a staff captain at the time. She had been a staff captain for quite a while. I think she was 9 years at Royal Caribbean, and she was the highest rated staff captain for 13 contracts in a row. And so I kept asking the gentleman that was in charge of the captains and marine operations when we were going to promote Kate, because I met her, I had a conversation with her, I knew she was special, I knew she was really good at what she did, and he just kept telling me her time will come. Well, we had a few captain positions open up because the fleet was expanding and some captains were also retiring, but Kate was never at that time promoted to captain. So I left after a couple of years in that role to become president and CEO of Celebrity. I brought a gentleman that I met at Royal Caribbean over to Celebrity with me to run marine operations for me at Celebrity. He happened to be a very good friend of Captain Kate's, and I said, do you think Captain Kate would come to Celebrity as a captain? So he said, let me ask her. And her answer was hell yes. And so she was the first woman captain at Celebrity. And she was and is still only the first American woman to ever be the captain of a mega cruise ship. And so she was the beginning of this change that I made along with the men that I worked with, because if it wasn't for them, we never would have accomplished what we did. And we went from 3% of the women of the mariners on the bridge at Celebrity were women at the time I took over. 33% were women when I stepped down. Only 2% of mariners in the world are women.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
a shocking revelation.
Yes, it's very low. And the other thing is it's not easy to get to 33% because not a lot of women opt into these roles. You know, these are very different roles for women, being away for months at a time. And, you know, it's a very different life at sea that you have to be willing and want to experience.
So I'll take that comment and we'll do a PSA announcement, because I'm big on telecommunications workforce, and we were not an essential workforce at all before the pandemic, if you can believe. And yet everybody has a cell phone and we all need connectivity.
Oh my gosh.
And people don't know that, yeah, you can climb towers, you can do, we keep the world connected. And these are good middle class jobs that people can go into, and we attract women in STEM. So for the maritime industry, it's the same. There are so many opportunities for women to join that exciting industry. It's just that we planted from very little into the girls, that there's some boys, that there's some jobs for boys, some jobs for girls. And this is really, this gender bias is perpetuated.
That's true. It's very true. Even young girls have their own gender bias. You know, girls are still not raised to realize they can do anything they want in a lot of cases, and they're still focused on the wrong things, how they look, and how they're going to get a boy instead of how am I going to get a dream job and think big and and do whatever I want. I can grow up to be anything I want to be. So
Absolutely.
we've made a lot of progress, but we still have a long way to go.
Oh yeah, I could bet if we take a bunch of little girls into that flight bridge, of that big ship, they would say, "Oh, I could totally see myself here." I think it's just we need to expose them. So with that question, and you, of course, are the chairwoman of the board of the Hornblower Group. I know it's a recent appointment. Congratulations. This diversity conversation, ESG conversation. I know you were very big on ESG and sustainability at Celebrity. But there are some terms that, it's felt that, well, there's diversity fatigue and people don't want to hear about it anymore. I'm a little bit concerned, and I would love to get your take on that too. It's like that some terminology and tick in the box, and people are starting not to take these subjects seriously. What are you seeing from where you sit?
Listen, I see everything that you do. I listen to everything you do. I see all the headlines you see, and it's a little troubling that people now look at when people talk about diversity, that it's become like a dirty word for companies and people are afraid to use it. They're afraid to talk about it because of the backlash that, people are getting. And, listen, it's a shame. That's how I feel about it. But what I see is different than what I hear. I still believe and I still see that people are looking for, first and foremost, we're all looking for the best candidate. There's never been a time that I've hired a diverse candidate that wasn't the most qualified person for the job. So I take, I take exception to people who think that people are ticking boxes by bringing in diverse candidates. We're all looking to hire the best person for the job. But the fact that we don't look at diverse candidates or feel like, we can't talk about looking at diverse candidates is just, I believe, fundamentally wrong. But that said, what I see in practice is different than sometimes what you read. And I see that companies are looking for diversity of thought. They are looking at diverse candidates and they're hiring the best people for the jobs. And in many cases, those are diverse candidates. And I also believe that the pendulum swings, you go from everybody's talking about it to now nobody can talk about it. It's almost like, people are afraid to talk about it. And at some point in time, it's all going to balance out again. And, but people cannot, people can't give up. And I think that that's something that people are just doing because it's the right thing and probably talking about it less.
That's so valuable. I appreciate your comment. I just realized my video froze, so that's technology for you out there, but that's okay. Lisa, I know that you, and we're running, and we could talk forever. You want to talk a little bit about your role at the helm of FIFA for the Miami committee. I'm just fascinated. You, I think, ignited, I don't know, you did a big fan activation campaign. What can you share on that front?
Yeah, I was, I always believe that I talk about it, I think in the book or maybe not, but I talk about it certainly on podcasts or when I have the opportunity to be interviewed. I believe that the connections we make are very interesting in life and that we never know where they're going to take us. We never know who's going to, who you're going to meet and what kind of a relationship you're going to be able to have or an impact or an impression you're going to be able to have on those people, which is why I believe you should always network, but you should always hold yourself to a really high standard because you never know when or where you're going to be talked about in a room about any opportunity. And I got a text from a woman that I met. She was the fiance, now the wife of a coworker. I had dinner with her as she was thinking about her own career and what she wanted to do. And then she fast forward took on a different role where she was one of the people in a room as they were talking about someone that they needed, the type of individual that they needed to lead the Miami host committee for the FIFA World Cup matches in 2026. Miami has 7 of them, and my name came up, and it was just as I was stepping down from my position at Celebrity and getting ready to leave the company. And I really thought I wanted to continue to do something that kept me really, really busy. And along with all my board work and my book and my leadership academy and all of these things, I think I bit off a little more than I could chew. But for a year, I was the head of the Miami host committee. And I recently stepped down just because it was 24/7 all consuming. And at this stage of my life, I was looking for a little more balance in it. So it took courage to say, you know what, I think I should have stuck with my original plan. But what was really exciting and interesting is that put together a great team. I met all the other host cities, in the United States. We got together quite often. We shared all of our excitement, all of the challenges, all the opportunities. It is a tremendously complex thing that we all have to pull off. It's 16 different cities in North America, first time it's ever been done. I think there are 50% more teams and 62% more matches that will happen in 2026 than have ever happened before. and it's happening during the same 6-week period in 16 different cities across a continent. So it's a big deal. I mean, you're dealing with the federal government on security and safety and visa issues and transportation issues. I mean, it was really it was quite an interesting year, and I got it to, I think, a pretty good place. Now it's, big fundraising activities, and now, it's putting together the final touches on all the different logistics and fan activations and community legacy projects that will be happening. So there's so many wonderful things that happen with the World Cup. And oh, by the way, it's the biggest sporting event in the world. And it's going to be happening in 11 different cities, including Miami, but it's actually going to impact the entire state. I know that Miami is the city. The matches are being played at Hard Rock Stadium. But we're expecting 800,000 visitors to the region, to the state, and close to $2 billion in economic impact. So this is a really big deal. And for all of those people to come into the state, they're going to have to fly into all the airports, stay in hotels all across the state, use Brightline, stay in eat in the restaurants. And so I think the economic boon to the region, as well as all the excitement, is going to be tremendous. So it's going to be great.
Well, it sounds amazing. And as a Miamian, I have to say I feel happy and proud that you saw that project start. So I'm pretty sure we're going to have a great participation. And so I'm sure that's giving you time. I want to get to the end of the interview without forgetting that I see your post on LinkedIn. I know that's how I found you. And I know you're big on, you have to be your own PR, which is the other thing that resonated with me, because I use the same strategy. And sometimes I apologize to people. They say, I saw you on LinkedIn. I say, yeah, I'm sorry. But those are zero marketing dollars, very efficient for me in my own thing. And it's great. People know what you're doing. So I know about your Leadership Academy because of the posts I see that are very valuable. It's almost like I get knowledge and content when I see your post. Can you share with the audience about that project? I know it's an exciting one, and I'm sure that the audience may be excited about what they hear.
Thank you, Leticia. I appreciate you asking me about it. It's launching right after the first of the year. We launched it to the initial wait list of over 150 people in just before Thanksgiving, and now we're going to open it up after the first of the year for everyone. You can find out more about it at Lutoff-Perlo.com, and what it is it is a 12-part, 12-module course on leadership and all of the things that I felt were most valuable in leadership, why they're valuable, stories related to them, outcomes related to them. We're going to continue to add modules over time. And once a month for 30 minutes, I do a virtual call where everyone can join live, anyone that's interested. We can talk about leadership, ask questions, talk as a group. There's also a community that's being created where all of these different people can have their own conversations about leadership, and they can email me any questions they want about leadership, or a problem they're having, or some advice that they want anytime. And that's all part of the Academy as well. And so I'm excited about it's next level from the book in terms of how I hope I can help people become the types of leaders that people want to be led by. And it's for leaders at all levels, any level. And so that's pretty exciting. So it's something that's very new for me.
Well, I can tell you will make waves with that too. It will be on the show notes, your webpage, so that people can look it up. But also, I encourage everybody to follow Lisa on LinkedIn, because just that it's a very valuable advice you share, and I love how you also bring all sides of you. I'm big on that. It's not only Lisa, the leader or the businesswoman. You post about your family and your husband or milestones. And I really think that people like to see the human side of the leaders. And some are very afraid of doing that. Like, no, you don't put personal post on LinkedIn and say who, and then it's funny because those posts, I don't know if it happens to you, are the ones that get the most traction and the ones that
Yes,
get the most
yes,
visibility.
yes,
Incredible.
yes. It's crazy.
Yes, yes.
I know, and I'm careful because listen, we can overexpose ourselves as well, and I never want to do that. But you're right. I mean, there's got to be some balance. People want to know you as human beings, not just some. Okay, yeah, she was president, CEO, blah blah blah. Who cares? But yes, those are the ones that get the most comments and the most traction. It's crazy. I couldn't believe.
Counterintuitive.
I know, I forget which one. It was like, holy crap, look at how many comments they got. And it wasn't even about me, it was about somebody else. But you're right. You're so right, Leticia.
It's a great tool to just sense the what message is resonating and what message is needed in the world.
Right,
I always see it
right.
as that as well. That's really how I started this podcast. And sometimes episodes that didn't do much for me, or maybe I didn't feel it was a good one, I get messages and texts. This is exactly what I needed.
Right.
And so that
Cool.
makes you realize that everybody's in a different stage.
Right. Yeah.
And everybody needs something different. And the mission, I think, it's about putting the content to the world and then, get whomever needs it, get it. And so 2 short questions left.
Okay.
One, just in case you didn't speak about any other exciting projects, I always leave my guests with an extra opportunity. Anything else you want to share with the audience that maybe is not out there? We've spoken about a lot of stuff, and it's a lot, so I would be surprised.
No. Yeah. The only thing I would say is, I was talking to someone the other day and said, I continue to evolve. One of my favorite expression, I have a lot of favorite sayings. One of them is by Darwin, and it says, evolve on the front of the t-shirt or become extinct on the back. And I believe that we all need to evolve. And I think some of us look at ourselves as one-dimensional, and we don't believe that there's different things that we can do, different value we add, different opportunities that are going to be out there. We associate ourselves with only one thing or one company, and we think that's all we can or will be. But just like I did in our business and for our brand, I evolved it, I transformed it. We have to do that for ourselves as well. And so that's how, as I post things, as I do the Leadership Academy or join boards or become the chairwoman or write a book, it's like I just want to keep either giving back or evolving as a human being and the value that I might be able to add to different people in their lives. And so I think that we should all think about that more because we have so many dimensions that sometimes we don't explore.
Beautiful. And the last one is related to how we stay connected to what makes us tick. And I want to preempt that I know you led celebrity through the pandemic, and there's many interviews and you speak about it a lot in the book. So I welcome everybody to invite everybody to listen to that, because to navigate what you really navigated as the helm of any company, all the companies suffer, but the cruise business was like that for, I don't know, over a year, 15 months. And then also you had a personal loss in the middle of it. So you lost your sister. I'm very sorry for that. But so the question is about when the time comes that everything is going like, to what, and you get hit from every possible angle, and Lisa needs to reconnect to your essence, to what makes you tick, to what gives you energy. What do you do? What's your practice? How do you, what makes you tick, basically, is the last question.
Yeah, I try to find quiet time and space because I feel like the best way I get myself through things is to be quiet and think about it and look for my inner strength to come through and get me through those times. Oftentimes I talk about things that are not good or bother me or have impacted me after I've gotten through them. Some people feel like they need to talk about it while it's going on. I really feel like I need to go into myself and and find my inner strength to get through. And then I have the ability to talk about it. Maybe at that point, I'm either looking for validation of how I'm thinking or different about what I'm thinking. I take it and sometimes I don't. But I really do that by myself. And when I was even going through COVID, and when I was going through the awful time of losing my sister, when she was so sick, every day I woke up and I told myself, what's your silver lining? Find the silver lining today. What is the silver lining in all of this awful mess that is happening in your life right now on both dimensions, personally and professionally? One or the other is hard enough. Both of them at the same time, I don't even know how it didn't just completely break me, if I'm perfectly honest. But I just tried to go back into myself and find my inner strength and try to look for the good in the bad that was happening around me. And I found that I was able to get myself through those times by doing that. And I was able to get my family and also the 20,000 people that were waiting to get back into business through that as well. And I always felt like, despite what I was going through at any given time, it was my responsibility was bigger than what I was going through myself. And I had to find a way to keep people hopeful.
Oh, it takes a lot, and they say that God doesn't give us tests that He doesn't know we can overcome. So I think that He gave you a tough one, but you raised to the top. So I really want to thank you, Lisa, for spending the time with us. It's been wonderful. I want to acknowledge my dear friend Rob Evans, who gave me your book and said you should have Lisa on your podcast, because he was absolutely right. Thank you, Rob. And to all of you out there, I hope you enjoy this as much as I have. And please take your copy of Making Waves and sign up for the leadership. This can be a game changer. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Leticia. Bye.
You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit leticialatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.